Okay, so in this video, I'm going to tell you every single team's worst nightmare for each fan base, and let's just jump into it. We'll start things off with the Tennessee Titans. This is kind of an easy one for me. They make it to the Super Bowl again. Things are working out perfectly. That's right. Even in your worst nightmare, you make it all the way to the Super Bowl. Things are going great. You're playing against the Los Angeles Rams here, and yep, you guessed it. Once again, you end up 1 yard short of tying the game and sending it to overtime. Also, the Indianapolis Colts get Trevor Lawrence. Okay, for Jacksonville, you start off 14-2 for the regular season. Minshew Mania takes over. Again, things are going great. Your only two losses came against the Tennessee Titans, who you happen to be playing again in the AFC Championship game. It comes down to overtime. Tennessee wins the coin toss, and they have the ball in field goal range, but Tannehill throws an interception to Myles Jack. However, on the return, Myles Jack fumbles the football, Tennessee recovers and returns it for a touchdown. Now, they review this, and it appears as though Myles Jack's knee hit the ground, but they do not rule it that he was down. So for the rest of your life, you have to now say Myles Jack was down. Also, the guy from The Good Place somehow gets canceled, so now all those great Good Place jokes no longer seem as funny and as adorable, and the Colts get Trevor Lawrence. So for the Colts, hey, your worst nightmare is starting off the same as a couple of your division rivals' worst nightmare. You go 0-16. This year is just a mess. Philip Rivers can't get anything right. You lose every single game. 0-16, but there is the good news. You get the first overall pick. Seems like you can select Trevor Lawrence. However, Trevor Lawrence has other ideas. He pulls an Eli Manning and states that he does not want to go to the Indianapolis Colts. He doesn't say why, just that he doesn't want to play for them. Indianapolis says, you'll probably play for us anyways. They draft him anyways, and he pulls a Bo Jackson, goes straight back to college, and finishes one more year with Clemson, meaning they completely wasted their first overall pick. For the Houston Texans, it seems like they're already living their worst nightmare with the trade of DeAndre Hopkins. I'll just say that they make it to the divisional round again, win their division again, but get blown out by New England. Also, Warren Moon comes out as a Tennessee Titans fan. For Pittsburgh, Baker Mayfield wins at least 3 home games, which means that he surpasses Big Ben for the most all-time wins at Cleveland Stadium. Also, the Baltimore Ravens have a historic offense, and they steal the name the Steel Curtain offense, and nobody talks about how weird it is, even though it makes no sense. They end up finishing 8-8, so again, in that sweet spot of no playoffs, and they don't get a good draft pick. Big Ben retires at the end of the season. The New England Patriots win their 7th Super Bowl, surpassing the Steelers for most Super Bowl wins of all time. And Choi Polamalu admits that he accidentally lined up in the C gap. For Cleveland, things start off great. They are 7-0 and looking like they're in prime position to go for a very big run until they lose 9 straight and completely miss out on the playoffs. And again, don't get a good draft pick either. On top of this, San Francisco goes on to win the Super Bowl. Why San Francisco? Because they had Kyle Shanahan. Cleveland could have potentially had Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. They let him go with the whole Johnny Manziel fiasco. Well, that was the rift that broke them up. So they can see what could have been win a Super Bowl. Also, Colin Cowherd wins the lottery. There is a football season in 2020. For Baltimore, things work out even better in the regular season than they did last year. They go 16-0. They break even more records than they broke last year, and you guessed it, they still get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, or second round because they get a bye. They lose to New England, who is playing Julian Edelman at quarterback. Not bad for a wide receiver. On top of this, Joe Burrow leads the Cincinnati Bengals to a ton of success. He gets them to the playoffs. They squeak in as the number 7 seed, and he breaks all of Joe Flacco's records, going all the way to a Super Bowl victory, and he ends up winning a Super Bowl, meaning that the Bengals now have a Super Bowl trophy. For the Chargers, things work out really well. Justin Herbert looks like he's doing pretty well, and in fact, he's really pushing the ball downfield, and he leads them to the number 1 offense. But that's not it. They have a great secondary, and with Joey Bosa leading the defensive line, they're able to have a really good defense as well. And they end up having the number 1 offense and number 1 defense, and you guessed it, missed the playoffs just like in 2008. On top of this, they decide that the ticket sales weren't doing well in Los Angeles. They moved the Chargers again to some random island off the coast of the Pacific, and they charged the San Diego taxpayers to have to pay for it for some reason. For Las Vegas, they make it back to the playoffs, back once again, and they even win a playoff game in the wild card round to go to the divisional matchup where they're playing the number 1 seeded New England Patriots. And you know what? Things are looking good. They're down a point, and there's 2 minutes left, but they have the ball already in field goal range. They're at about the 30. They want to get a few more yards. So Derek Carr throws it, and it's an incomplete pass. Or is it? Turns out he was hit as he was thrown. The ball gets a little bit wobbly, and because of that, it ends up getting ruled a fumble, and New England recovers. A thing that would not have happened had the tuck rule still been in place. New England wins that game. Kansas City beats them in the AFC Championship game and wins their 3rd Super Bowl, tying Oakland/Las Vegas and Denver for most in that division. And on top of it, the Raiders trade John Gruden back to Tampa Bay again. For Kansas City, it's hard to have too many nightmare scenarios when you just won a Super Bowl, but I came up with one. They end up with the best record in football after the regular season, and they're up 38-10 in the divisional round against the Raiders. However, Oakland fights back, and they make sure that Kansas City blows this lead, just like Kansas City blew the lead to the Colts back in the day. On top of this, Herbert actually ends up being really good. He throws for over 5,000 yards and 51 touchdowns, so he's much more impressive than Mahomes was in his first season as a starter. For Denver, the best I could come up with is that all these weapons work out. Locke is the real deal, and they lead them to the best offense ever. This is the new best offense ever. And once again, they face the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl and get completely blown out. On top of this, weed becomes illegal in Denver again. Just a rough situation for them. For the Jets, I think the honest worst case scenario is that they win 7 games. So they're just good enough that they don't, fire anybody. Adam Gase is still the head coach, but also they still don't get a good draft pick. On top of this, Jamal Adams ends up being Defensive Player of the Year, so you kind of miss out on, what you traded him for, and the Seahawks win the Super Bowl, meaning that the picks that you got are going to be less good since it'll be a 32nd overall pick for the first round pick in this year. On top of this, New England Patriots end up with the worst record in football, so now they get Trevor Lawrence who can dominate the division for many years to come, and Sam Darnold regresses and plays very poorly, and you start to wonder if he's the answer. The Buffalo Bills, even in their nightmare scenario, it's hard to imagine them doing too poorly. In fact, in this scenario, they start off 9-3. Things are looking good, and they just need one more win to already clinch a playoff spot. So they're feeling good. However, in their 13th game now, what happens is that they're down by 1. There's 1 second left, and they're at about the 30-yard line. So 47-yard field goal. Certainly no gimme. Misses it. Not the end of the world. You still have 3 more chances to just win 1 game and get into the postseason. I think you know how this is going. They lose 4 straight games, which causes them to miss the postseason altogether. On top of this, we'll say the New England Patriots get Trevor Lawrence, just like what happened with the Jets, and we'll give the Cowboys another Super Bowl ring. After all, they beat the Buffalo twice, so I'm assuming there's some resentment between those two teams. For Miami, Fitzpatrick turns from Fitzpatrick to Fitztragic, but that's okay. They drafted Tua. However, when Tua plays, it's clear that he's just not the same guy after the injury, and he's really not going to be the franchise quarterback that you hoped he would be when you spent a top 5 pick on him. On top of this, some of the pieces actually do pretty well, so you end up going 7-9, which means that you don't get a great pick, and also, worst case scenario, the New England Patriots end up going 19-0, becoming the second team to go undefeated, and theirs is more impressive since they did it for more games. Well, okay, everyone else is, so many of these worst case scenarios had good things happening to New England, and New England has good things happening to them in their worst case scenario. Despite the fact that they don't have a ton of talent, Bill Belichick, he ends up putting together a tremendous year coaching. He ends up getting everybody in a way where they can be very effective, and he leads this team to a perfect record in the regular season. Cam Newton wins MVP. Things are looking great. They even beat a couple of their rivals in playoffs. They beat the Colts in the divisional round. They beat Denver in the AFC Championship game, and they're 1 win away from winning the Super Bowl, and I think you know who they're going to play, the New York Giants. But again, it's actually not as bad as you would think, because just one night before the game, the entire quarterback room for the Giants gets the coronavirus. They can't play. So now you have a Super Bowl coming up, and the Giants don't have any quarterback, not even a backup who can play. So they have to call on the only guy who has some familiarity with these players, and that's Eli Manning. Eli Manning leads the Giants to a come-from-behind victory in the Super Bowl after an unknown receiver makes an unbelievable catch with just 1 foot. And because of that, once again, New England cannot beat the Giants and go 0-3. Okay, it's time for the NFC. I think this is going to be pretty interesting. We start off with the Cowboys. The Cowboys, it's basically what the worst case scenario for them is mediocrity, where they've kind of been stuck in. So they go 8-8. The Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl, and we'll say the Washington football team gets Trevor Lawrence. For the Eagles, they go 8-8. The Cowboys win the Super Bowl, and the Washington football team gets Trevor Lawrence. Not too different between those two teams. For the New York Giants, they're in the playoffs. Daniel Jones looks solid, but nothing special, but the team around him looks very good. They make the postseason. However, they lose on a last-second punt return to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl. On top of this, Dwayne Haskins has a great second year and proves that it really was just coaching his first year that was the problem, and he ends up being much better than Daniel Jones. For the Washington football team, they go 0-16, and they pass on Trevor Lawrence for a running back. On top of this, Daniel Snyder renames the Washington football team back to the Washington Redskins, and he buys the Capitals and Nationals, and the Cowboys win a Super Bowl. For the Arizona Cardinals, I think this is another kind of easy one. They make it to the Super Bowl, play against Pittsburgh, and they lose in the final minute, despite the fact that Larry Fitzgerald had 700 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, although it probably is for the best that they lost, because had they won, there'd be about a million jokes about Kyler Murray being too short to ride the rides at Disney World, and those can be very lame, so, maybe for the best. For Los Angeles, the Rams that is, Jared Goff has another down season, and you start to wonder, is he really the answer? Sean McVay retires to become a Monday Night Football commentator, and Jalen Ramsey retires to become an NHL hockey player. On top of this, the Seahawks beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, meaning that they get to actually get their revenge on New England, whereas you failed to. For San Francisco, they're back in the NFC Championship game, and they're playing Seattle right here. It's good news. They're up by 6 points, but DK Metcalf, he burns Richard Sherman, scores a touchdown over him in the final minute of the game to give them the lead, which they hang on and win. In Metcalf's post-game conference, he says, well, I'm the best receiver in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Sherman, that's the result you're going to get. For Seattle, hey, good news. You're in the Super Bowl, and you get a chance to get revenge on those New England Patriots. Now, you're up 7 points with about 2 minutes left, and Cam Newton's running to try and get into the end zone. And despite the fact that it appears he's clearly short, they ruled a touchdown, and they don't overturn it, meaning that it gets ruled a touchdown, and New England ties the game. It eventually goes to overtime, where Russell Wilson, he gets the coin toss, and he says, we want the ball, and we're going to score. They get the ball all the way to the 1 yard line, and despite the fact that Russell Wilson has been completely unstoppable all game, Pete Carroll decides to run it. Chris Carson fumbles the football, and some unknown, undrafted rookie picks it up and runs it all the way for a 99-yard touchdown, and everyone calls it the stupidest decision of all time to run the ball at the 1 yard line. For Chicago, the good news is you finished worst in football, which doesn't sound like good news, but hey, you get an opportunity to make up for your bad selection of Mitchell Trubisky. However, this time they don't select anyone that anyone really has on their board. They go completely off the wall, draft an unknown quarterback instead of drafting Trevor Lawrence. On top of this, Deshaun Watson wins MVP, and the Packers win another Super Bowl. For Green Bay, things are looking great. Things are going really well for them. And in fact, they're in position where they could maybe end up going to the Super Bowl. They made it to the NFC Championship game, and they're playing Seattle, and they're beating Seattle handedly. They were up a couple of scores earlier on in this game. It's now been a little bit close, but you still lead by 2 scores. Seattle does score a touchdown to make it a 1-score game, but they need an onside kick to really have a chance to win this game. So it's not really worth getting too worried over. However, when the kick comes up, there's a guy who's been a special teamer for all his life who sees the ball coming right at him, but he knows that his job is to just block in this situation. He goes over to block, but the ball hits off of his head, meaning that the player who is supposed to catch it has no opportunity to do so, and a Seattle defender is able to make the play. They get the ball, and they eventually win that game in overtime. For Minnesota, they make the Super Bowl. They're playing Pittsburgh, the team that beat the Vikings the first time they ever went to a Super Bowl, and they have a real opportunity here. It goes to overtime. Big Ben, he throws an opening drive interception. So you have about a 35-yard field goal attempt for Dan Bailey, who's been perfect all year. He hasn't missed a single field goal all year until this one, which is wide left. A few plays later, Boswell ends up making a 70-yard field goal, one of the best kicks in the history of the NFL to win the Super Bowl, and sends the Vikings home 0-5 in Super Bowls. Okay, for Detroit, I forgot to record this clip accidentally, so just doing audio only, but things work out pretty okay. They end up 9-7 and squeak into the playoffs with a first-round matchup, and guess who they're playing? The division-winning Green Bay Packers. Now, this is a competitive game, and they're down just 1 point with about 30 seconds left, and Stafford throws the ball downfield, and they get in field goal range because there's a pass interference penalty. But wait, the refs, despite the fact that it was a blatant pass interference penalty, they huddle up and they elect to pick up that flag. The Green Bay Packers end up winning that game because of that call, and they end up going all the way to the Super Bowl and winning it. And on top of it, the Bears get Trevor Lawrence. Okay, for the Atlanta Falcons, there was an obvious choice. I could have just had them go to the Super Bowl against New England, 28-3. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. So they are in the Super Bowl. They're playing the Patriots, and the score is 28-3. But this time, it's the Atlanta Falcons who are down. But they start coming back. They make it 28-20. But New England, they have the ball, and they start driving the ball down the field. And eventually, there's an incredible pass from Cam Newton to Julian Edelman. He's able to stay in bounds and get them inside field goal range. This time, New England, they don't overthink it. They run it 3 times, kick a field goal to put themselves up by 2 scores. Atlanta, they do get a touchdown, but they aren't able to recover the onside kick. New England gets a first down back, and that's the ball game. They win the Super Bowl. For Carolina, they're also playing the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. New England Patriots, giving the NFC South a lot of trouble, but they're playing the Patriots, and it's okay. They're up by 6 points, and Cam Newton for the Patriots just fumbles the football. However, he's able to not just fall on it, he picks it cleanly up and runs it all the way for a go-ahead touchdown. At least it should have been. The good news is the Patriots actually miss an extra point, so this is great. It's a tie game. However, in overtime, New England wins the coin toss, and on the opening kick, Carolina kicks it out of bounds. New England takes advantage of that great field position to win yet another Super Bowl over Carolina. Okay, so for the New Orleans Saints, they're playing the Rams in the divisional round. They did very well in the regular season. They are now playing Los Angeles in the divisional round. It's a tie game, but the Saints, they have the ball on 3rd down and goal. If they can get a touchdown, they can make it a 7-point game. And even if they don't, if there's some way they can get a first down, they can run out just about all of the clock and kick a field goal, so the Rams would have almost no time left. And in fact, that first down happens. Drew Brees completely airmails a throw to Michael Thomas. However, a Ram runs in, and there's a little bit of contact, but it's clear that it's not pass interference. However, from the angle the ref was standing, it looked like pass interference. So he throws the flag, and since they can't review it, this now means that the Saints are in great position. They get a run out, all but 20 seconds left of the clock, kick a field goal, they're up by 3. It's the complete opposite of what happened in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago. And so how is this their worst case scenario? Because the Rams then pull off a Minnesota miracle of their own to beat the New Orleans Saints. And this now means that not only do the Saints lose in another heartbreaking fashion, but now the Rams can always say, well, hey, 2 years later, after that bad call in the NFC Championship game, we overcame just as bad call and beat you in a situation that we would have been in had that call been called correctly. And finally, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think this one's an easy one, actually. I didn't have too much trouble with this one. So it starts off in week 1 when they're playing the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees gets injured. And so in that week 1 matchup, they have to go to Jameis Winston, who completely lights Tampa Bay up. In fact, Winston completely puts it together under Sean Payton, and he wins MVP. The New Orleans Saints end up playing Tampa Bay in that NFC Championship game. And Tampa Bay, despite the fact that Winston is playing fantastic, they have an opportunity to win it. Tom Brady throws a pass to Chris Godwin, and despite the fact that Godwin clearly had possession before the ball hit the ground, it is still ruled an incomplete pass, and because of that incomplete pass, it ends up being the difference in the game. Tom Brady retires, and the Carolina Panthers get Trevor Lawrence, and that is every team's worst case scenario, in my opinion. That's the nightmare scenarios. What do you guys think? What would be your nightmare scenario for next season? I always love hearing from you. I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of a different video. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.